My name is Christy Remmel. I am the president of the DFW Veterans Chamber. And today we have a guest speaker, which I will let Chris introduce. But before I do that, I want to show you guys something really quick, and then I will do that. So this is our website, and our website is filled with information. I keep it as fairly updated as I possibly can. But here's all of our events always. If you need to refer somebody to from our chamber, you can come in here, click on this button right here. It'll take you to our directory with everybody. I will be updating it this weekend for the new members that we have. But here's all their information. I get a lot of texts. Can you send me so-and-so's information? Do we have this person? And you know what, guys? Whenever you guys send me a text asking for a particular person in our chamber, this is where I come to. I don't have it on my phone. I just come to our website and I look for that information. If you come to our events page, this is where all of our events are listed again, and I will be updating it. You can click on a particular event, and then another page will come up, and then it'll give you more information about that event, right? Our resources page, here we have the veteran resources, veteran shops, and then business resources for you. And then if you want to know anything about our headquarters, this is the tab for that. And then we're going to be doing the blog this weekend, so we will have great and interesting articles in here. And then if you are not receiving our newsletter, you can come in here, sign up for the newsletter, and start receiving that newsletter. Okay, and if you want to know about us, we have the About Us, the leadership, and then again, the business directory. So this website is filled with information, and it's here for you guys so that you can take advantage of it. Again, I try to keep it as updated as I possibly can. Here's our corporate sponsor, and then our partner sponsors. Warrior Games will be in San Antonio. So here's a little bit about that. And then if you want to donate to the cause, all of this money, so if you purchase one of these little critters, the money goes to our wounded and ill veterans to help them with their needs, right? And then if you want to send me an email, write it, and I do receive the emails. So please don't forget about the website. If you need anything, it's faster for you to come in here and look it up than to text me and wait for me to reply to you. Although I do, and I appreciate it. I want everybody to start using the website. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Chris.
Good morning, Chamber. My name is Chris Smith, and I am a financial advisor with Edward Jones. And one thing that I do is I try to become an expert in my clients' financial life. So really that's what I'm focused on is figuring out exactly what their goals are and exactly where they want to be, and then walking through their life with them to make sure that they reach those goals. I'm also a retired Air Force veteran, so senior master sergeant in the Air Force. I was a Russian linguist. And it's my pleasure today to be able to introduce our guest speaker. One of the things that I get to do on the chamber is serve on the board and schedule our member spotlight speakers and our veteran service organization speakers. And today we have one of those veteran service organization speakers. His name is Stanley Victrum. He goes by Vic. And Stanley is the director of veteran services for Dallas County, which happens to be the 9th largest county in terms of veteran population, with over 90,000 veterans that call Dallas County home. So he has a huge obligation to serve those 90,000 veterans that are in Dallas County, and I'm sure he sweats that every day. We're proud to have him as a member of our chamber. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. He is a Marine Corps veteran. He was enlisted and also an officer. He is a graduate of the Citadel as well as the Naval Postgraduate School. So he's pretty much lived the military ethos since he was probably a teenager. So without further ado, I will pass the floor over to Vic.
Okay, good morning, and certainly thank you to the Chamber for the opportunity to be able to come and talk about our programs here. My name is Stan Victrum. Just in summary, I thank Chris for just mentioning that I was in the Marine Corps for 1 or 2 years, about 27 of them with on active duty as well as in my inactive reserve time. So certainly it was a great honor to serve a great nation. This morning, and if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and actually share my screen. Really, I just have a couple of objectives really this morning is really to kind of share with you an apple and kind of point you to the apple orchard because the information as far as the VA benefits is so expansive. Obviously, the VA is a pretty big outfit. And so I don't want to go through and actually tie up all of my time and stuff to trying to go through every program. I'm just going to go through and actually kind of hit the highlights from the overview that we basically prepared today, as well as to basically recruit you, not only the veterans, but also the other patriots supporting veterans, is to be able to go through and actually recruit you to become more of an ambassador, to be able to go through and actually help me spread the word to the veterans here in our community so they can make sure that we can get them connected to the benefits that they're entitled to. And that's one of the things I noticed as a part of my job is that so many veterans don't know what is available to them. And because they don't know, they don't necessarily apply. And our job is to go through and actually make sure that people are aware of what's available to them, and then obviously help them basically to apply for those benefits. The big thing for us is that we are a team of about 5 people here in the Dallas County office. And we basically assist veterans with getting connected to their benefits at no cost to the actual veteran. And what we'd like to do once we have the presentation up is to be able to talk about our programs, to hit the salient points of it. We won't necessarily go through every slide because if we did and stuff, that we'd be here until tomorrow. But again, that's really our job here. They basically have been in the office since August of 2020. And we have a team of people that have extensive experience in being able to go through and actually meet with veterans. As a matter of fact, we are basically meeting with even veterans and myself to be able to go through and actually listen to their story, to be able to go through and actually hear what they typically are. You have typically had these particular experiences. Now, what can we do to go through and actually kind of walk through the actual process to basically get people connected to their benefits? And we basically help people typically with not only disability compensation, but also basically with survivors pensions, and not only with the veteran, but also with those people who are the veteran dependents as far as their spouses or their dependent children. Again, we have folks that are very, very passionate about typically what they do. Thank you.
Oh, and Stanley, meant to tell you, I guess I should ask your permission. I've pretty much stolen that line that you had. I've heard you speak to it. A 27-year love affair with the Marine Corps. Well, I can't say that about the Marine Corps, but my time like that was with the Air Force and the Air National Guard. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is you should basically be passionate about what you do, because if you are, you never really work. So one of the things that the Marine Corps gave me the opportunity to do was one, a poor kid from Georgia being able to go through and actually get educated, and then be able to go through and actually get experience, and then be able to go through and actually travel really around the world. And so, and meet some really great people, meet and work with some really great people. So that was just a life-changing experience. So certainly we're very grateful that we had that opportunity. What I'd like to do this morning, again, it's not necessarily try to give you the whole orchard, but basically give you an apple and point you to the orchard, as well as to act as though I'm somewhat salt to create a thirst, so that you may be able to go through and actually want to go and actually learn more about typically the various veteran programs that are typically available to you. You can in turn go and actually share that good news with other people. Certainly we're going to go through and actually cover these items here. What we typically do, a small brief VA update, to talk about the introduction to veteran benefits and the appeals process, and then take a look at the benefits both at the VA as well as the state, and then talk about some of the other programs that typically are available at the state as far as being property tax exemptions. I certainly hope that if you're a 100% disabled veteran, you will certainly take advantage of that. And then talk about typically what you can expect if you basically come to our office to get help with basically developing a particular claim to the VA. All right, if you'll advance to the next slide. Our mission really at Veteran Service Office is to get veterans connected to their benefits that they're entitled. And if we're not doing that, we have no reason to exist. And so our folks typically have a lot of experience. They typically do that quite well. We have several of our veteran service officers not only accredited by the Texas Veterans Commission, but we also typically have several of them actually certified at the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, DAV, as well as the DFW. Next slide. Some of the services that we typically provide, and we'll basically go into what each one of those mean. Well, actually, I won't go into detail, but we'll basically talk about them just a little bit. Various things such as disability compensation and the dependency and indemnity compensation, and we'll talk about what that is. Pensions, survivors pension benefit. Next slide. Appeals process, because the VA doesn't always agree with the decisions, the submittals that we typically make. So we have to go into an appeals process. Military discharge reviews, say you got less than a honorable discharge, we can certainly work with you to have those discharges actually upgrade or review those discharges for possible upgrades. Debt waivers, sometimes the VA pays us too much based upon a dependency change, dependent change. And so that they obviously discover that, and then we have to basically pay money back. They talk about educational benefits, healthcare, hospitalization, certainly getting connected with the local VA, health administration, and then the information on county tax and home loan programs. Next slide. Some of the recent VA updates, obviously they typically do cost of living increases, typically every year, typically in the December of the year. Certainly the latest one, 1.3%, just went in effect in December of last year. VA travel reimbursements are now online, and then electronic health records is something that they are trying to get out of the paper records business. They're basically in the process of doing a pilot up in the Pacific Northwest to go ahead and actually start rolling out an electronic health records system. And so they can expect more of your health records to be online, so that way you don't necessarily have to go through and actually wait so long to go through and actually doing things like record searches, to be able to go through and actually marry up the information that's in the service treatment records to the actual claims, so that VA can go through and actually make a decision on that particular claim submitted by the veteran. Next slide. Comprehensive assistance for caregivers. Certainly they are trying to do more for the veterans that typically need assistance with their daily activities and daily living. For those people that are caregivers, they're trying to go through and actually provide more support for those people who are caregivers. And obviously on the VA, the Veterans Benefits Banking Program, the VA is trying to get away from basically having to issue out things like paper checks. They want to go through and actually work with a variety of different other kind of an association of banking concerns, to be able to go through and actually make sure that the veterans can basically have access to electronic banking. And obviously you can get COVID-19 vaccinations at the local VA. I think that not only for the veterans, but also for the spouses. In the old days, they would go through and actually have to have a schedule an appointment, but now it's pretty much walk up. I actually got my vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccination, Pfizer vaccinations from the local VA. And the VA secretary just came out with announcements. There was one, the toxic exposures announcement, as where they realized that for the veterans that were typically serving in the basically the Gulf on the OEF, as well as the Enduring Freedom, as well as in a place like Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, as well as Iraq, that they were around things such as burn pits. So they basically are trying to go through and actually make that was in the process of getting the rules made, so that they can go through and actually start having veterans be able to go through and actually apply for toxic exposures for particular matters, so on and so forth. What's happening is I had a veteran that just recently came in, And he said, you know, I've got issues with bronchitis. And I said, okay, just start asking that question and listen to their story. And he said, oh, by the way, did you serve in the Gulf War? Yes, I did. Were you around burn pits? Yes, I was. Oh, by the way, let's go ahead and actually see if he came in for one thing, but when we listened to his story, we were able to go through and actually start the process for getting ready to make a VA claim for the issues with toxic exposure. So certainly we want to continue to do that. Along with the the VA Secretary's announcements on the toxic exposure, one of the things they did is they added for the Vietnam era veterans, for the people that served inside of Vietnam on the Blue Water Navy, they basically added 3 more conditions to that presumptive list. I think it's bladder cancer, Parkinsonism, and then hypothyroidism. And they are going to automatically review, if they basically filed a claim for one of those, they're going to automatically review those. And so if you typically made a claim for that and they were denied, it's going to be automatically reviewed. Next slide. Okay, disability compensation, some of the things that we typically can help get the veterans connected to. Dependence and indemnity compensation, we'll talk about what that is. Pension, survivors pension, all of those things actually are tax-free. Next slide. Disability compensation is obviously a monetary benefit for that's paid to the veteran because of disabilities they've encountered because of either disease or injury they've aggravated or occurred by their military service. And again, that compensation is obviously tax-free. That's probably one of the most common that we typically see. Next slide. And these are the current disability rates as of December of 2020. If you have no dependents, you obviously see the column there on your left. And then after you have a veteran and a spouse, you see the column there on the right. And obviously when you get at the 30% mark, typically that's when you start being able to go to actually be compensated for dependents, not only dependent spouses, but also any dependent children, school-age children that are 18 years or less. And typically if they're going to an accredited college that VA recognizes, then they basically get additional compensation for them as a dependent kid up until the 23rd birthday. Next slide. And then this is just what the DIC is, Dependence Indemnity Compensation is basically if you died on active duty or basically you died from your service injuries. Next slide. And again, I plan to leave this particular slide as a part of the actual session. This is talked about your eligibility, and we already kind of hit the highlights on that in the next slide. Veterans pension, typically for those folks that basically served during a wartime period, typically 1 day doing, and then what so much service time associated with it as well, doing what is called a recognized wartime period. Next slide. Survivors pension is obviously for those surviving spouses and unmarried dependent children of wartime veterans. And certainly you have eligibility criteria for that as well. Next slide. Aid and attendance for those folks that typically need assistance with their daily activities for vulnerable veterans, but sometimes it's surviving spouses. So certainly if their person is, needs help with basically, getting up, bathing, eating, cooking, preparing meals, so on and so forth, that they have a service-connected disability and they basically need assistance with their daily activities for living and stuff, that certainly we can apply for that as well. Typically, as a part of, if the veteran is significantly enough disabled and stuff, they typically kind of automatically get this as well, but we do typically want to call that out. Next slide. Obviously, these are the recognized war periods: World War I, World War II, Korean conflict, Vietnam era, and then the Gulf War. Sad to say, there's not as many, I think, as far as the World War II veterans. I think in 2010, I think there were typically around a little bit less than 1 million of those World War II veterans that were alive. And then now, sad to say, in 2020, 21, I think there's less than 300,000 now. So there's less of those veterans around. So again, we're trying to go tonight to get the word out to them as well as to the Vietnam era veterans as well, to make sure that they typically have access to certain benefits. We want to try to help them make a claim for those benefits. Next slide. Certainly, VA doesn't always agree with some of the submittals that we make, and they sometimes either deny the claim, or they basically the benefit comes in less than the amount that basically we were looking for. So we go through the appeals process, supplemental claim, high level review, or board appeal. Next slide. Supplemental claim is after the VA makes the decision and says, okay, we either denied or we basically don't grant the actual claim as the veteran was seeking, and the veteran has new and relevant evidence, and certainly we basically can make an appeal for that process. We help the veteran prepare that appeal. Next slide. High-level review is that, so we don't necessarily have new evidence, but maybe they basically interpret some of the actual rules differently than what we see them. So we ask for a more seasoned reviewer to review the actual case, and then hopefully we basically get a different determination by the VA. Next slide. Then obviously, if the veteran chooses to, he can actually make an appeal directly to the board of Veterans Appeals and stuff in Washington, D.C. And there's a process that you go through to make that a reality. Next slide. This process is obviously probably going to take the longest part, because obviously you have to go through and actually talk to the veteran law judges. You have the Board of Appeals. You can actually have three options: request a direct review, submit more evidence, or you can request a hearing. Obviously, those processes, depending upon which one you select, take a little bit longer time. Next slide. You can also, if you choose to basically meet with a veterans law judge, you can go through and do that on a variety of ways. Specifically for COVID, you can actually choose to have a virtual hearing from your home. You can basically video conference at one of the VA locations near you. Typically at the RO in Waco is typically where we go. The regional office in Waco is where we typically would send people if that's their choice. And then you obviously have an in-person hearing at the board in Washington, D.C., which is obviously, if you travel there to the board there in Washington, D.C., you do so at your expense. And again, those take sometimes more than a year to go through and get scheduled. Next slide. And then obviously you have VA education benefits from the Montgomery GI Bill, which is called Chapter 30, Survivors and Dependents, which is Chapter 35, and vocational rehab, which is not just always going to college, but you can also basically get rehabilitation training. Say a veteran got injured, if a veteran got injured or whatever, they basically have also get voc rehab if they can no longer basically do what they get your work in the area where they typically have been trained, then they can basically get rehabilitation training as well. Then you also have the post 9/11 benefits, and what is called Chapter 33. And then based upon your years of service and stuff, then those are the amounts that you can receive there, 50, 70, or 100%. Now, 90-day one just basically changed as of August 1st of 2020. Next slide. And then obviously you have state veteran benefits, basically what's called Hazelwood Act. If you basically if you are a Texas resident and you entered service from Texas, and you're honorable discharge or general discharge on honorable conditions, and you can typically apply for Hazelwood Act benefits as well. No money changes hands. You just basically get credit hours for a school that is here in Texas, or a school that is here in Texas or funded by the Texas legislature. It's in-state funded schools only. So again, if you do typically, and then some of those benefits called the legacy program can actually be basically transferred to dependent children. Next slide. You also have benefits through the Veteran Land Board to be able to go to nice get loans to basically buy property or to actually do home improvements. Next slide. Also, you have property tax exemptions that are available to veterans as well. And I'm certainly just basically making an application to the local appraisal districts is obviously one of the ways to do that. You certainly want to make sure you do that so that way you can go through. I know everybody likes paying their property taxes, but certainly if you don't want to pay a little bit less, then certainly go through and actually see the DCAD with your award letter from the VA and stuff that it says here. Typically, I need to basically get this particular exemption. Next slide. I think this is kind of the ratings don't typically, you don't have a rating of 29%, but this just basically shows you the range. The important thing is that you can, as a disabled veteran, you can actually get certain deductions and stuff. There are exemptions on your property taxes. And one of the things that people look at is most key is getting at 100%. If you are 100% service-connected disabled veteran, you basically don't pay property taxes. You are 100% property tax exemption. And if you do, if you are 100% disabled, certainly come down and see us. And if you don't have this particular exemption, certainly come down and see us so we can make sure we get you connected to the DCAD so that way you can go through and actually, again, I know everybody likes paying property taxes, but if you want to go through and actually get this particular exemption, which taxes can be a little bit high here in the great state of Texas, certainly come down and see us. We'll be more than happy to go through and actually help you get you connected to the DCAD. Next slide. Certainly, these are the things you typically need when you talk about preparing your benefits claim. Obviously, certain records that you'll typically need depending upon what you're claiming. DD-214, I think, is a standard. Certainly, if you can't get your DD, if you don't have a copy of DD-214, I certainly hope everybody does. That as a veteran, certainly you can go to nice go to the archives.gov and stuff that actually get that. And then whatever other documents that we typically will need, specifically to talk about marriage license, divorce decrees, birth certificates for children, so on and so forth. We certainly will need those to turn those into the VA to go to actually show, because it's all based upon what's reduced to writing. Next slide. And what you can expect, we're going to be professionals. We're going to go through and actually do everything we can to go through and actually make sure we look at everything that we possibly can to go through and actually make sure you get the maximum benefit. That's really what the VA's goal and our job is, to go through and actually get you the maximum benefit. And we'll work with you as long as we possibly can to go through and actually get your claims and stuff that's submitted in, so that way we can get you to get you connected to the benefits that people have so earned. Next slide. And here are our offices. We actually have 4, and 1 in each one of the actual commissioners' districts. Obviously, I'm sitting currently in the county HHS building. That's the main office. We have 1 office in the Road and Bridge 1 over near the Garland, the new VA hospital they have there at Road and Bridge 1. The address is there. And then we now just recently, in February of this year, opened up one at the South Dallas Government Center. And we also, typically, the court just approved us to have open up a new one at the North Dallas Government Center there on off of LBJ Freeway, and the address is listed there. We have just recently came back into the offices as of the 7th of June, but certainly we can make in-office appointments and stuff, no problem, so we can maximize your time here with us, so we can go through and actually get all the information together so we can help you prepare and submit the actual benefit claim. Next slide. And those are our contact information there. Certainly, we'd be more than happy to go through and actually help veterans. We do it for free. If we basically are not doing it, we have no reason to exist. So certainly, we love serving veterans, and certainly we want to go through and actually, again, give you the apple, point you to the orchard, as well as basically help to create a thirst in you, so you can in turn go and actually share this information out with other veterans and other survivors of veterans, so that we can go through and actually make sure they can get their claims in, so they can go through and actually hopefully sometimes very much so improve their overall quality of life. That's all I have. Certainly questions and answers.
Awesome presentation, Stanley. I'm in the middle of a claim right now. I'm actually in appeal. And I learned an awful lot in this presentation. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Again, I do apologize for the technical difficulties, but sometimes those things happen. Any other questions?
So when somebody comes to see you, do they need to bring a copy of their medical record, or would you be able to access that?
Okay, certainly if they have copies of their records and stuff, that's always a great thing, but we don't necessarily need them. If they can basically point us to where those records are being kept, what's called service treatment records. What we do is we make the claim into the VA, and then what we do is the VA has what is called a duty to assist. We basically specify that this particular doctor or this particular, even the VA, if you basically go into the VA medical centers, they typically, this is where I'm being treated, and they will typically have those records that will basically point to the particulars for my claim. And so it's certainly if you have the records, we scan those in, we attach them, we basically upload those into the VA so they can look at them directly. But if you don't have them, all we need is just to know where those records were held. We fill out the actual form so the organization can release those records, and then the VA basically then has the duty to assist to go to get those records so they can be considered. Now, if you have the records, obviously it's a little bit faster process, but if you don't, we can basically use the duty to assist through the VA, but that takes a little bit longer time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, Stanley, I think what would be important, thank you for this great presentation. I think one thing that would be important, especially for this group, in a prior presentation that I saw, you had talked about how if someone didn't have their records, like Marines normally don't go, they have a corpsman with them. The corpsman takes care of it all. It doesn't necessarily get into the record. How would they be able to show that on a claim?
Right. So what happens is that, obviously the VA goes based upon the record. I mean, the service treatment record. And certainly I think as Ms. Chrissy knows, she was an FMF corpsman. Certainly that information is supposed to get into that person's record book. For whatever reason, if the record doesn't exist, you can still go and ask what is called, if somebody do what is called a buddy statement, somebody that basically, and hopefully that corpsman who basically did the treatment, or the corpsman or the medic that did the treatment is still around, so they can go through and actually say, here's typically what I did to go through and actually make sure that we treated the actual individual for this particular item. If the person is currently basically being seen, say they're being treated, they had a battle injury or they had a wound, they got ran over by a Jeep or whatever and stuff, and they basically are not still suffering from that. Hopefully somewhere in this person's record that basically has a record of that. And say they were in, for example, if that person was in Southwest Asia, and they basically were in combat and they were around burn pits. Well, they basically have burn pit registries that they typically have now. So if you were there based on this particular time, they know that you typically are around burn pits. So what you would do is you may not necessarily, so now all of a sudden you have a condition that's associated with that, asthma, upper respiratory, bronchitis, or whatever, then what they do is we just basically match those things up. But again, if you can get buddies to go through and actually say, yes, I was able to go through and actually treat this particular individual for this particular item, then we basically take that buddy statement, add it to the actual claim, and then submit that, and that's for the VA's consideration as well. Other questions?
Well, if you have any other questions, please reach out to Vic, and he will be happy to answer your question and help you out.